and a little bit off to the side of the main focus of Sambo Zen, at least these first three of the four. And therefore, they're a little bit Henry's kind of, Henry's own sort of thing. They're a little bit, well, I mean, they're not really Henry's thing, but they're not quite hardcore Sambo Zen stuff. So the curriculum, so to speak, or the syllabus or whatever to call it, the material, is not necessarily what Valerie's been so familiar with. And therefore, it's a little unfair of me to ask her to speak to all the points that I think I'm trying to address. So especially also that Valerie is actually, as some of you have discovered, leading a monthly introductory retreat, which is, has at least 2 marvelous talks from Valerie in it as well, which I'm not part of. So you can get more of Valerie there as well, should you want to. And I hope many of you will, no matter how experienced you may consider yourself to be as a meditator. As we heard earlier in this retreat, it's always not back to square one, but starting in square one. We don't go back to square one. We're in square one, So the more, the deeper we go in the practice, the more we know we're just starting now. And not only do we know that, the better that is. It becomes more and more of a thing to treasure, the fact that, this is the first moment of my practice. This is the beginning of my practice now. And that becomes a more and more wonderful thing to be able to say, to be able to acknowledge as true. That's my little plug for Valerie's intro retreats, you see. Be a beginner. Be a beginner. Okay, so the next thing I want to come to is a very short poem that I hope I can remember accurately by my dear old friend Sam Willits, who's a marvelous poet, and you can find his one book if you hunt it out. It's called New Light for the Old Dark. It's a very beautiful book. Sam and I were childhood friends, and we used to go on holiday together sometimes, with our respective troubled mums and other family members. And one place we used to go was a famous old resort in England called Lyme Regis on the south coast that had a long, long beach. And he and I would go off, I don't know, age 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, whatever, and then onwards. We'd look for lovely pebbles, that were still wet, and how beautiful they were when wet. And Sam wrote this poem many years later, very short, about us doing that. And it goes like this. It's called Childhood Seaside. We pecked along the shore like wading birds, looking for bright pebbles. Still wet, the stones were vivid, treasurable to hold. Back home, the air soon ordinaried them, and their allure was gone. Sometimes I think your love covered me like water, and under it I shone. It's short enough that I'm just going to do it again. Childhood seaside. We pecked along the shore like wading birds, looking for bright pebbles. Still wet, the stones were vivid, treasurable to hold. Back home, the wind soon ordinaried them, and their allure was gone. Sometimes I think your love covered me like water. And under it, I shone. Okay. So basically, what I want to say today about our path, about our life, is I hope it's simple. It's that people, we human beings, are beautiful. That's the wonder. That's the marvel. That's the reason for all this practice. To be able to see more clearly how wonderful people are. And therefore, love others and ourselves more. And also, therefore, work for the well-being of others and ourselves more. I believe that's basically what Buddha came to see. How beautiful we are. I mean, I hope it doesn't sound like some kind of bragging. You know? I mean, it's all of us. It's all of us. We think, we feel, we are aware. We can express ourselves. We can show our appreciation for this world and for one another. We can make beautiful things. We seek to understand this world more deeply and to be kind and good to one another and to other beings. You know, the European Union, whatever it is, its Code of Human Rights, a statement on human rights, includes animals. It's enshrined in EU law that vertebrates are included. I mean, you might say, well, why not invertebrates? But at least they've got the vertebrates. And they have the cephalopods, you know, the octopuses and cuttlefish and squid that have very, very elaborate central nervous systems, like vertebrates. We do that. We care. It's beautiful. But we also suffer. It's in a way tragic that we suffer so much. And it's so common not to be at peace. We suffer because of conditions, because we treat one another badly, sometimes very badly, for long periods of time, for generations. And we suffer because we can be full of aggression and greed and deep misunderstanding. Buddha, I think, saw all this and saw that it was tragic that we suffer so much and that much of it is unnecessary. He saw that we could be living in a very different way, devoted not to creating suffering, to being caught in the dynamics that generate suffering, but instead in well-being and in the dynamics that generate well-being. Thus, the path was born, the eightfold path that we hear about commonly in Buddhism. 8 folds, 8 dimensions, 8 aspects to the path. Roughly speaking, see things more clearly. Orient toward well-being. Prioritize well-being. Act well, meaning non-harmfully. Speak well. Earn our livelihood well. Again, non-harmfully. Reduce moods and emotions of affliction and increase positive, helpful frames of mind, states of mind. Develop our capacity for simple, quiet, accepting awareness in the here and now. It's the 7th. And let that grow into deep, absorptive unification of mind and heart, where our whole being finds a deep peace. That's the 8th samadhi. So in a way, this is the sort of crux of the matter of this retreat, samadhi. It's a way of being intrinsically well, non-suffering, without external assistance, so to speak. Intrinsically well. Well, just as we are. And it is good to find that. It's very good. And it can feel like the end of the path. I'm done. I've found my way to peace. Intrinsic peace. But is it the end of the path? In terms of the eightfold path, it is the last fold. So does that mean it's the end? Or is the 8th of the 8 folds that constitute the path one of the folds in the path to something more? Teachers actually warn us of finding a cozy nook halfway up the mountain. I've been warned at times by my teachers about that. A place where we feel good and just want to hang out there. But then the teacher's job seems to be actually to turn us out of our little meadow or arbor where we'd rather just stay, because the path isn't in fact over. on up the mountain to the top. And then all the way back down the mountain, which can be an even harder journey, actually. You know, many of you are familiar with the 8 or 10 ox herding pictures. The 8th or the 10th, depending on the scheme, the set, being back in the marketplace, all the way back down the mountain. Really, that's probably an even harder thing to let go of, the top of the mountain, let alone one of these little meadows halfway up. They're child's play compared to coming off the top of the mountain. I touched on this very beautiful sutra where Buddha describes finding our way to samadhi as the refinement of gold. With the samadhi, we've finally got the pure gold that's pliant and can be turned into anything. And what do we do with it? Well, actually, in the same sutra, Buddha says, well, here are some things you can do with it. You can learn to, for example, levitate. I'm not kidding. It's in the sutra. It's like the TM, the TM folks. They did yogic flying, and actually, I never saw it, but I believe that there was a time when in the UK they formed a political party, and they were going to, put forward candidates for the general election, and their what do you call it? Their sort of their propaganda or their party ads, I guess, their commercials really were shots of great numbers of people doing this yogic flying. They're sitting in the lotus and they just pop up off the air. I mean, I missed it, actually. I never saw these ads, but people were laughing about them in the UK, as if that were a pledge of how valuable they'd be as politicians, that they could do this levitation thing. And in a way, that's Buddha's point. He lists these things you can do. You can levitate, you can bilocate, you create a double that can go somewhere else. You can, stuff like that. You can, as I was saying, read people's lives, etc. Read people's minds, and I don't know, stuff like that. And then he says, but you can also take your samadhi and use it to see clearly, to see things as they are. What's that about? He says it very clearly. That means to see that beings suffer, that suffering has causes, that the causes of suffering can end, and therefore suffering end. And that the way that comes about is by following the 8-fold path of training. So again, that 8-fold path, understanding more clearly, acting less harmfully and more helpfully, and doing this meditation practice that cleanses us, that purifies our hearts and allows us to dwell in the moment in greater peace and ultimately find this wholeness of our whole being, here and now, just like this. That's samadhi. And then what do we do with it? We use it to see the whole picture of the suffering of beings. Now look at a little sort of footnote that I've just somehow got to address, and I think this is the moment to do it. is what about these jhana states? I haven't touched on them in this retreat. Absorption states. They're kind of famous sort of thing in Buddhism. Dhyana in Sanskrit, jhana in Pali, chana in Chinese, or chan, and zen in Japanese. They were named after these states. Dhyana is a word that can simply mean meditation, or it can mean more specifically these sets of conditions of deep, deep absorption that we can enter into in meditation. And Zen is named after that, you know, because it has more focus on meditation than on scriptural study and so on. So the jhana states are absolutely within the umbrella of samadhi. Sometimes if you're asked what, I mean, there are sutras that they define samadhi as being the 4 absorptions. There are sutras that do that. In fact, there are, again, I don't want to get too lost in this. There are 4 primary jhanas that are usually everybody agrees on, and then there's a further 4 that there's a little bit more debate about. And there's a debate about what they are, the second set of 4, and there's a debate about whether they in fact constitute awakening in and of themselves, or whether they're still kind of prior to awakening. I think these are fairly rarefied debates that, you know, we don't need to get into, and we could argue in different ways. But I think it's worth my just sharing a little bit of a sense of at least the first 2 jhanas. They're said to be actually, they just naturally evolve from one to the next. So it's not like you need to do, if you can taste the first, the second will naturally evolve from it in time, and so will the third, and so will the fourth. And if you believe in the others, then so will the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. And in some schemes, there's even a 9th, you know. And then sometimes that one is called awakening. But others say, even when you hit the first jhana, it's awakening. So I don't really know quite what to say about that, but I think, except that in Zen, we wouldn't agree that the first jhana is awakening, because it doesn't actually describe what awakening is, which I'm about to get to. But let me first just give you a little bit of a taste of these jhanas, because they have such beautiful descriptions in the sutras. So I particularly want to just have you hear about it. In this sutra, actually, the Buddha simply says, all we do is abandon the 5 hindrances, the defilements of mind that weaken wisdom, the 5 hindrances. All we do is abandon them, and we naturally enter and dwell in the first jhana. In this particular sutra, it's simply a matter of quelling the 5 hindrances, and lo and behold, we're in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought and examination, with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. That it's enough to just be sitting quiet and still. That alone brings rapture and happiness. The practitioner makes the rapture and happiness born of seclusion drench, steep, fill, and pervade their body, so that there is no part of their whole body that is not pervaded by the rapture and happiness born of seclusion. Just as a skilled bathman or his assistant heaps bath powder in a metal basin. We don't do this anymore, but if you can imagine, soap is actually made out of powder. and they gradually add water to it. And they heat, so they've got the bath powder in a metal basin and sprinkling it gradually with water. He kneads it until the moisture wets his ball of bath powder, soaks it, and pervades it inside and out. Yet the ball itself does not ooze, just the right amount of moisture. So too, the practitioner makes the rapture and happiness born of seclusion drench, steep, fill, and pervade their body, so that there is no part of their whole body that is not pervaded by the rapture and happiness born of seclusion. And again, they enter and dwell in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, and is without thought and examination, and has rapture and happiness born of samadhi. She makes the rapture and happiness born of samadhi drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of her whole body that is not pervaded by the rapture and happiness born of samadhi. Just as though there were a lake whose waters welled up from below, and it had no inflow from east, west, north, or south, and was not replenished from time to time by showers of rain. Then the cool fount of water welling up in the lake itself would make the cool water drench, steep, fill, and pervade the lake, so that there would be no part of the whole lake that was not pervaded by cool water. So too, the practitioner makes the rapture and happiness born of samadhi drench, steep, fill, and pervade this body, so that there is no part of her whole body that is not pervaded by the rapture and happiness born of samadhi. It goes on, but I'll hit pause there because you get the sense this is intrinsic wellness, not dependent really on anything, except you could say their own practice that has brought them this possibility. So is that the end? Is that the real matter? And I want to just remind us that here in Sambo Zen, we're well, we think of ourselves as sort of well, maybe this is my term. We do the whole hog. We're whole ox Zen. Whole ox. Not a great if you get a glimpse of the tail or the hoof or the snout or the ear or the flank or the rump. Great. We want you to get that glimpse of the living ox. But we don't stop there. If you want more, we'll help. Whole ox is the possibility that we hold out to actually experience the whole beast, the whole ox. Really, top of the mountain, you know. It's really possible. And then get kicked off the top of the mountain. Because basically, this samadhi, of course, it can be applied to the great purpose of a lifetime. Awakening. To go beyond our own suffering and well-being. To embrace what? The suffering and well-being of all. Rather, not exactly to embrace it, to discover that we can't actually choose to embrace it. we're all in this together anyway. This is the Mahayana, the great ferry, the great vehicle, the wholes, not just wholes, all is all. We are an intrinsic part of it. We're an intrinsic part of the whole. We are ourselves and we are the whole. We discover we were never really separate meditators right from the start. We were never really a separate practitioner going on our journey right from the start. We've been part of everything. And lo and behold, everything is also actually a miraculous apparition. Boundless field. One boundless field of phenomena, of appearances. By the way, the word phenomena or phenomenon, it comes from Greek. Phino is the verb phino, which means I appear. And it also means I shine. Every last thing that appears, every last thing we experience is an appearance. That's all we can say of it. It's an appearance. It's a shining. It's a shining forth. Everything from a itch to an elephant. It's a shining. It's basically a shining gift, a treasure. We've been hearing Valerie quoting this amazing line of Dogen, set of lines. It's all treasure, treasurable to hold, vivid, shining, like those little stones. What a profound gift it all is. And we are actually also. And we're part of it all. And what it is to have this life, no matter if it's short or long. What a gift it is. The real gift, actually, is this here, now. This is the only gift, actually, we'll ever really have. And it's boundless, and it's infinite, and it's all-inclusive, and it's all of us. Not just us on the Zoom, though it is us on the Zoom, but each of us on the Zoom is so much more, really. And not only is it beyond all measure, but we never actually really have to even look for it, because this is the only place it can be. It's our own body, it's our own mind, it's our own heart, it's our own awareness. That's our great, gift, really, I suppose we could say, in this practice. This is the gift of practice, is to help us discover this. And then, let's please, let's share it. Let's share it every possible way. Working for the healing of this world the best we can. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for being here and practicing together like this. It's a wonderful thing to be doing this. Thank you very, very